Zelenskyy says Russia is no different than ISIS as he bashes the UN for allowing Moscow to go unpunished and retain privileges.
Here's a summary of the article.
In a blistering speech to the UN Security Council, Zelenskyy offered harrowing details of the massacre in Bucha, a suburb near Kyiv where hundreds of civilians were killed. Russia's use of its veto power undermines the whole architecture of global security and allows them to go unpunished, Zelenskyy said. Zelenskyy effectively suggested that the UNSC would lose all credibility if it continued to allow Russia to sit on the council and wield such authority. If there is no alternative and no option in terms of removing Russia, Zelenskyy said, then the body should dissolve itself altogether. We must do everything in our power to pass on to the next generation an effective UN with the ability to respond preventively to security challenges, Zelenskyy said, making the case for fair representation of all regions of the world in the Security Council. When asked in early March whether the U.S. wanted to see Russia booted as a permanent member, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, "We don't see that happening. They have a permanent seat on the Security Council." Of course, that is why it is so particularly disturbing that Russia, given its particular responsibility for upholding the UN Charter, is actively subverting the Charter and abusing its position. The Biden administration has instead zeroed in on seeing Russia suspended from the UN Human Rights Council, which would require 2/3 of the General Assembly to vote in favor.
This post received a score of 41,000, with an upvote ratio of 90%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
I swear he has aged so much in such a short time. I feel for him and the people of Ukraine.
As happened to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. I watched a few episodes of Zelenskyy's TV show on Netflix, the Ukrainian comedy he starred in before he was elected president. In one he talks about Lincoln and even opens a speech with the beginning of the Gettysburg Address. His autobiography is going to read like metafiction.
I think you remember the Gettysburg Address scene wrong. He was being chauffeured around by the Prime Minister on the day he was elected and being informed what to do. When they started planning the inauguration, the PM told him not to worry as his speechwriters already have a speech ready for him, which turned out to just be a Russian translation of the Gettysburg Address. That or I'm the one completely misremembering it.
You are remembering that correctly. He didn't feel like it was right to copy a speech and not be sincere. He even had a chat with Lincoln in his dream the night before in the show.
Imagine Hitler having veto power in UN Security Council. Actually, it's happening now with Russia.
He didn't have one in the League of Nations, so he left like every nation which didn't agree with their resolutions. Same thing would happen with the UN if there was no veto for the great powers.
Except Russia isn't a great power anymore. Especially after these sanctions.
The things that made them a world power haven't changed though. Russia was never deemed a great power because of its economy. It was deemed a great power because of its vast territory, its massive arsenal of nukes and its abundance of natural resources. These things are sadly still there.
Greater than Russia was never deemed a great power because of its economy. I mean, the USSR, whom I assume you synonymize with Russia, at its peak had an economy almost 3-4/5 ths the size of the US, which was 1.5 to 2 plus x that of any other nation at the time. So, it certainly was part of it.
I guess that was due to the boost of Reconstruction after the devastation of WW II. The USSR never had a strong consumer market nor a wide middle class, and they played superpower without the means to do so. That's why when Gorbachev came around, and asked themselves why they had been stagnant for more than a decade, they finally checked the balance books and used their calculators to realize that playing empire is very costly. Today, only the USA and China can afford the luxury of playing big boy.
ISIS with nukes, etc.
Reminds me of Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes saying, if ISIS had a streaming network you would call your agents. Politicians aren't fighting for moral values and more concerned about return on investment, etc. So when an aggressor has a nuke, diplomacy is always on the table.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.